Princess Celestia is a figure revered by many ponies throughout Equestria. She wasn't some monarch that watched over the land from a throne. Whenever time would permit it, she would go out and interact with her subjects. Any pony would delight in the opportunity to even have a friendly, casual chat with their beloved monarch. She would even go out of her way to lend assistance to whatever any pony would be struggling with. For that, she was given the nickname of Momlestia, one spoken with the highest of reverence. One day as the sun shined brightly upon the city of Canterlot, an orphanage in the Midtown area was throwing a fundraiser to aid in renovations. Celestia herself had opted to devote her spare time to aid in the efforts. The door knocking caught the attention of the orphanage's caretaker, Miss Meadow. Busy with paperwork, she managed to pull her attention away for a moment. She opened the door to a sight that still surprised her. It was Celestia herself, flanked by two of her finest guards.
Your Highness!
Gasped Miss Meadow as she took a bow. The elderly unicorn's display drew an unamused chuckle from the monarch before her.
No need to bow before me. It's nice to be here.
Celestia sank. Miss Meadow stood up and shook the princess's hoof.
I do apologize about that. Anyways, it's a pleasure to have you here, Your Highness.
The pleasure is all mine.
Celestia replied as her gaze wandered around and noticed a small stack of papers in a nearby office.
I hope I didn't interrupt what you were doing.
Oh, I was signing some paperwork. The event won't be for another hour, so go take a look around if you wish.
Leaving the old mare to her work, Celestia and her escort wandered the halls of the orphanage. She sighed at the myriad of circumstances that would deprive a foal of loving parents. As much as she would want to personally intervene in such matters, she felt it would be best to stay out of such affairs, as much as she disliked it. While most were out at the playground, only a few foals remained inside, hanging out with one another. As her gaze turned toward a room, her eyes caught the attention of one neon blue Pegasus colt sitting upon the bed and reading a book. Her mind was beset by a bound of curiosity. Why would a colt not hang out with others? Was there something wrong? Celestia wanted to know. With a nod, she entered the room with her guards flanking the doorway, standing watch outside. Approaching the young colt, Celestia got a better look at the book. It was a story about the royal guards, accompanied by pictures depicting their valor. Celestia couldn't help but hum in amusement. She knew very well the colt had dreams. Dreams of being in the guard.
That's an interesting book you have there.
Celestia spoke, revealing her presence to the colt. He was at first surprised at her approach. He clearly knew who she was. Eventually, he collected himself enough to speak.
It's my favorite book. Every night before bed, I love to read it.
I certainly see that, Mr.
Azure Glide.
He finished. Celestia was surprised by his near total calmness. Her curiosity only continued to grow.
Well, Azure, why is this your favorite book?
With those words, Azure left the bed, picking up a broom from the wall. He held it in the same manner a guard would carry his spear.
I want to be a guard, just like in the book.
Though she knew the answer beforehand, she was nonetheless intrigued by Azure's confidence, even as he did drill and ceremony with the pretend weapon in his hooves. Such a display she found heartwarming. He clearly held his dreams and aspirations to heart, but she could detect an underlying sadness in his expressions. As he finished with his routine, Azure sat with Celestia again with a subtle frown.
Is there something troubling you, Azure?
Asked Celestia. If one took a close look, his face spelled disappointment. Throughout her 1,000 years of life, it was one of the many faces she became familiar with. She also noticed that he was a little older than the foals living there. With a sigh, Azure began to explain.
All of my friends have found families. I've not been adopted yet, and I see them leave with a loving mommy and daddy. I don't know why no pony wants me, but I'll get adopted. Eventually.
Celestia felt shocked at the young colt's statement. While she felt slight sadness over Azure's circumstances, she was amazed over how he handled it. Yet she wondered why no pony chose to adopt him.
It's incredible that one so young as yourself is handling such a thing so well.
Celestia muttered as she pulled Azure in for a hug.
One thing I've learned in life is that you shouldn't give up hope. Greener pastures will come eventually. Just keep a chin up and always wear a smile no matter what.
Breaking the hug, Azure wore a smile, one that made Celestia smirk as well. As much as she wanted to sit and chat with the colt, she had other affairs to see to. Trotting away, she wished the young colt well. Soon, it would be time for the events to begin. The event was a simple gathering and socialization affair. Before they began improper, Celestia gave a speech about commending the orphanage's efforts to giving less fortunate children a place to stay. It was semi-short, but enough to drive the importance of the fundraiser's goals. As it ended, a thunderous roar of applause was had. As she would often do, Celestia stayed a while longer as the event died down. Some foals were adopted, while the rest said goodbye to their friends. Miss Meadow sighed as she finished the last of her paperwork. The fundraiser was a success, and the bits needed for the renovations were made. She felt appreciation for not only Celestia, but for those who helped out, no matter how big or small. With another knock on her door, she opened it, and it was Celestia again.
Your Highness, I would like to thank you for helping out with things today. The fundraiser was a massive success.
Again, the pleasure is all mine. You work quite hard for one your age.
Well, this caliber of work is normal for what I do. If anyone here is a hard worker, it's you because of your duties.
Humming with amusement, Celestia brought over a tea kettle, pouring a cup for the weary caretaker. Taking a sip herself, Celestia's thoughts drifted toward Meadow's occupation and how she was doing a great service for Canterlot, helping out the displaced foals robbed of their parents or other reasons. For her, giving them a place to stay and be safe was a great pleasure for Miss Meadow. Strolling to a nearby window, Celestia observed all the foals in the auditorium. Some were leaving with loving families, while others stayed behind, no doubt saddened over having to say goodbye to their friends. But the sight of Azure Glide still caught her eyes. He walked around with a broom, sweeping the floors clean. Though his face spelled disappointment, there was a large tinge of hope beneath it all.
Miss Meadow, what of that one colt, Azure Glide?
Miss Meadow's ears perked up over the mentioning of the name. She was well familiar with him as he amongst the eldest of the children at the orphanage, but he was also a great helper.
Oh, him? Yes, I remember when he was left on the steps one winter night. Never found out what happened to his real parents. What a shame. There were times I had to console him about not getting adopted, but he's usually a cheerful colt. Why, he's also been of great help to me, putting the little ones to sleep and helping with cleaning. I would guess more than anything that it's to distract himself. Why?
The last question rang through the princess's ears. Why would she ask about a colt and him specifically? It was no secret that she treats all ponies in Equestria as if they were her own. For one colt like Azure, she was impressed by how he dealt with his situation. But still, Celestia knew that could only go so far.
Oh, I was just curious. I actually had a chance to talk to him earlier.
A subtle smirk glowed over the princess's face, one that Miss Meadow had become familiar with over her lifetime. She had seen the face come and go as she ran the orphanage. She knew what Celestia meant and intended, recognizing it with a nod.
I understand.
Azure Glide walked amongst the cribs of the full room, ensuring the more smaller occupants were fast asleep. With a shush, he shut the lights off and left the room, taking care that he didn't make the smallest of noise. Turning around, his eyes locked onto the kind face of Miss Meadow.
Hello, Azure. How were they?
Sound asleep, ma'am. It was no trouble at all.
Well, what could I have done without your helping hooves? I thank you for all you've done for me, but there's one last thing I need of you.
What is it that you need?
To say goodbye.
The moment those words left her lips, Azure Glide froze in place. But the next few would have an even greater impact.
You're going to a new home.
For a while, Azure sat there in disbelief with his hooves shaking. He couldn't believe it. He was finally going to have a loving mother and father. His heart fluttered with excitement, eager to meet his new parents.
Oh my gosh! I have a new mommy and daddy! Yippee!
He shouted as he jumped up and down with unbound glee. Miss Meadow cracked a smile at his display of joy. His worry and sadness had finally been lifted.
Okay, now let's go to your bunk and gather your belongings. They'll be waiting for you there.
Miss Meadow and Azure trotted down the halls towards his room. Once they opened the door, Azure was caught off guard by what he saw before him. The same alabaster alicorn with a flowing mane of 4 colors. She was the same mare he had talked to and displayed the dreams he held dear.
Why, hello there, my son,
spoke Celestia with a smile and hooves outstretched. Azure's eyes began to water up with tears, but they were not tears of sadness. They were the product of joy. It was hard to believe that the Princess of the Sun herself would take him in as her son, but here she was, hooves outstretched, welcoming him. With his heart overloaded with joy, Azure flew into Celestia's hooves, wrapping all 4s around her barrel and nuzzling his tear-soaked face into her chest fluff. He was so happy that at long last, he had found a place to belong.
Shh. It's all right, my dear son. You don't have to feel sad anymore. You're going home.
Celestia shushed, rubbing his back and rocking him back and forth to calm him.
Sleepless, Mango?
In the midst of her calming of her adoptive son, the 2 guards trotted in, bowing before their ruler.
Return to the castle and prepare a room for the young one.
Nodding in acknowledgement, the 2 Pegasi guards flew off to carry out their charge, leaving the 3 ponies to themselves. With his emotions calmed and his mind fully processing what happened, Azure looked upon the face of his new mother with happiness. Climbing up on her back, Azure Glide took one last look around the place he called home for most of his life, before flying off to greener pastures. The night soon fell, and the adoptive prince was tucked neatly into bed. Celestia looked on at her newly adopted son with happiness. She always wanted to be a mother, but was never able to have one of her own.
Hey, Mommy. Can you tell me a bedtime story?
Mommy. It was a word that Celestia had never heard that referred to her, yet nonetheless, it was a title she was proud to hold. She turned toward Azure with a motherly smile on her face.
I know a great many stories, dearie. Which one would you like to hear?
The ones about heroes.
It took her a bit to think of a heroic tale to read to him, but there was one she knew all too well.
All right. This is a tale of the Pillars of Equestria.